Hi, everyone. I hope you're having a great day. I want to create a little video talking about the final 10%, which arguably is 90% of the work. Now, this is in context of, doing a startup or launching a product, whether it's for a client or yourself. And, the joke in the industry is as you're sort of planning out your project, you have it all planned out time-wise, it's going to take this long, and then you get to that final 10%, that polish, that nitty-gritty, and it ends up being 90% of the work. And it's really true. There's a lot that comes up that takes a lot of time. And in this video, I kind of want to explain some ways to fast track that work. Different services, different products, different ideas you could do to make it happen, quicker and more efficiently. They are just things that I've used. And in fact, I'm doing this video now because I just got into early access, a new startup called Dashhost. You may be familiar with it if you've been following my channel, as I've put some videos out about it in the past and a few live streams that I've been kind of building it in the open. So let's get into it and talk through this stuff. First off, just so that some of this makes more sense, I'll give some context on what Dashhost is. Dashhost is a service that lets you host your Flutter web apps. And on top of that, it has some intriguing features, mainly the fact that it supports essentially dynamic metadata used for SEO. So if someone shares a specific link of your Flutter web app to social, it can pull the right image, pull the right description and title, all that kind of stuff. So it's not just like a generic, this is my app. It's, something to that content, whether that's, an about page on your Flutter web app or user generated content like a post or a comment or whatever it may be, a product. That's essentially what Dashhost does. And it has a continuous integration sort of element. So you can set it up so when you connect a particular branch, it will build your project for you in the cloud. So you don't have to worry about doing your builds locally and uploading files. It's all just kind of automated. So that's what Dashhost is. If you want to check out more about it, we're in early access. You can join the waitlist. Just go to dashhost.app. But this is not an advertisement for Dashhost. I just wanted to have some context because everything I'm going to be explaining is what I used in this final 10%, mostly in the final 10%, to get this thing up and to market, even in like an early access beta sort of way. We'll talk about the tech stack first. For those interested, it is built in Django on the back end. That's where most of the work I'd say is. And then we're using Flutter on the front end. For this, I think Flutter was perfect because it is really like a dashboard that we're building for people to manage their apps. Something like when you log into Versel, it's that kind of vibe. You see all your apps, you see your projects, you can trigger deploys, you can configure things, all that kind of stuff. I also want to use Flutter specifically because this is an application meant to host Flutter, so we should probably at least build a piece of the tech stack in Flutter. And in fact, the dashboard for Dashhost is hosted within Dashhost, which is kind of cool and allows me to really see and use it as a user, which I think is just helpful in any startup to use your product so you can kind of see it from that perspective. Switching now to like the infrastructure side of things, I landed on using Heroku. I've used Heroku a lot. I've used lots of things, whether it's DigitalOcean app spaces, render, just making your own VPS, various things like that. And I landed on Heroku partly for the familiarity, partly because it has everything I need. It also has really good support for custom domains, which this service needed. So I'm able to, allow my users to very easily point a record, and now, their app can be hosted on whatever domain they want. That was one of the deciding factors between something else I was experimenting with. So I'm not saying Heroku is necessarily, the best, but I am kind of saying that for, a Django app, traditional sort of service. I have used a lot of these things, and each one I could go through and be like, there's one thing missing that Heroku does better most of the time. And aside from maybe pricing, which, there's definitely more cost-effective things, I do, think it's a good thing to start on. You can always move off it if, when your product gets bigger. But don't focus too much on like premature optimizations. Don't focus on getting every little cent, by building stuff custom, because you might never get to market. So something like Heroku, working for me. We're using obviously AWS for certain things. I mean, Heroku's built on AWS, so lots actually happening on AWS, but I'm using that an S3 there. You can, with Heroku, of course, use one of their add-ons, they're called, to essentially work with an S3, but you're paying way more doing it that way, and there's crazy limitations on that. So just spin up your own S3 if you're doing anything with file uploads and stuff, which of course this service requires. I'm using Cloudflare for my DNS. That's just a go-to pretty much on anything. Anytime a client sends me a link to, hey, sign into my GoDaddy, I'm like, okay, first step, move the DNS because GoDaddy's interface is annoying. Cloudflare is awesome. For many reasons. We could do a whole video on what's great about Cloudflare, and I've only used a little bit of it. There's so much more. But one feature I want to mention that I've never used before on Cloudflare is their email forwarding. So instead of going and setting up something like, a lot of the times if you buy something on GoDaddy or Hover, you can pay an extra bit of money to get email forwarding set up. Cloudflare just does it for free. So I recommend that. So rather than me setting up a whole Google Apps thing, which is something I might do in the future, if this business grows, when I have employees and whatnot, I just have email forwarding set on to go to my personal email, and then I can make as many email addresses as I want for free, and it's fast and secure, and it's great. So definitely, check out that feature rather than going through the rabbit hole of setting something up through wherever your domain was bought. For sign-in, for this service, I landed just using GitHub. So that's the only way you can make an account right now, unless you manually talk to us through support. We could technically set one up with just an email. But I want to just have a single click sign on. It's just, easier for people. It's also more secure for people. And because the service ultimately requires GitHub anyways, I just figured why let someone sign up any other way? Because they don't have a GitHub account. They're not going to be able to use this thing. In the future, if we support things like GitLab or Bitbucket, obviously I would add those options too. And I'll probably add a Google to create your account at some point, but it's not super high on the priority list because I'm just trying to get everything up and get to market. So yeah, picking my battles here. Sending transactional emails. So in the past, I've used SendGrid, I've used Mailgun. I've even done some videos on that stuff. And I heard recently about something called resend. And honestly, it's amazing. It's just a really nice interface, really simple to set up. I can use it for free for my use case until I start actually having to send a lot of emails. For transactional emails, we only really need to send, hey, this deploy completed or this deploy failed, as well as a password reset. So I don't even think I'll get over that tier soon. But if I have to pay, it seems pretty affordable compared to the other ones. And under the hood, I believe it's using AWS AES or SES or whatever AWS uses for sending emails. So it's not, it's definitely a well-trusted thing in terms of its actual underlying infrastructure. So check out Resend. Highly recommend it. It'll be what I use, moving forward. For subscriptions, although we're not live right now with collecting people's money, I do have it set up and we're using Stripe. There's really no good other option other than maybe PayPal, just because, not that I necessarily like PayPal more for the integration side. It is a good option to, give your users, and it's probably something we'll add at some point, especially for people that are in countries that sometimes credit cards are harder to get. And it does seem with my early user base that might be, the case. So we might add that at some point. But yeah, Stripe's great. We're not using anything like Revenue Cat at this time. I might decide to use it, but I've just built right into Django working with Stripe's webhooks, and I just like to have sort of fine-tuned control of that instead of relying on something else, and of course not paying another $20 a month for something. Stripe Atlas. So this is something new to me that I found out about, and I'm so glad I found out about it because it is amazing. If you need to make a corporation, before you set up your Stripe account, go to Stripe, search for Stripe Atlas, and go through that process. There is a cost, but I mean, setting up a business has a cost anyways. I believe ultimately it was $500 US to process it. You're going to pay that anywhere if you're trying to incorporate a U.S. company. Now, is that required? Maybe not. You might be able to do something just as an individual, sole proprietorship sort of thing. But I wanted this to be really legit and trusted, and have essentially Dashhost Inc. As something I can put on my page. So it was really cool, and I'm not surprised because Stripe's amazing, and I set that up pretty quickly, and everything's just automated in terms of submitting all the stuff to the government, creating your incorporation papers, doing your tax stuff, at least initializing it. It doesn't do your taxes for you. That's a problem for a year from now, me. But yeah, Stripe Atlas is cool. And through Stripe Atlas, I learned about some other things. I set up something called Stable, and Stable's a company that basically lets you have a US physical address, which is needed for the company itself. It's going to be needed for a bank account, and it has a little bit of a cost with it, but way less than renting a place or even probably a PO box. And you get access to your mail because they'll just email you everything that comes in, which is kind of cool. So yeah, Stable helped me get this off the ground really quick, and it all just kind of happens in the background. You just fill out stuff, and Stripe Atlas actually passes a lot of your information, so you're not filling it out twice. They have an integration with it. Similarly, using something called Mercury for the bank account. Sets up a US bank account, and it's just something you can integrate with Stripe Atlas. So it passed all my, incorporation papers over, the address, the company info, all that kind of stuff. Was really easy to get up and going. I think it took me maybe 20 minutes. Now there's some stuff's happening in the background for them to actually get it going, but I don't have to do anything until I see an email from them. Now for customer support, although we don't have really customers yet, I'm using Intercom. Maybe you're familiar with it. It's that little, thing in the lower right, a little help button you push in, you can chat with people. So I'm using that. And it works with Flutter. It works really well with not just the iOS and Android, but they have a web version too. Now for legal stuff, setting up your terms and condition, privacy policy, cookie policies, all that kind of stuff, I use Termly. And Termly, you can actually get a lot of it free, and they'll just give you the HTML, for your terms after you fill out the stuff. But I sort of opted to pay the small amount of money it is a month, so that they will actually update the terms as needed, like maybe new legislation comes in or your product changes. They will kind of manage that for you, which is kind of nice. And it allows it to just be hosted on a link when you're paying for it. So I didn't have to go through all the, taking the HTML and formatting it to look good in Tailwind or whatever. I just send people to this link, and it's, up to date and good. So yeah, Termly, pretty cool. For analytics, although I added Google Analytics because it's kind of the typical thing, I wanted to check out something new, and I'm using Unami. And so far, so good, although I don't have, a ton of analytics or stuff. And I'm really only using it on the marketing site right now, just to understand if people are coming to it. It seems good so far, but I can't really speak too much about it, about how is tracking custom events and lead generation and stuff, because I haven't used it for that yet. But I have heard good things. So check out that if you're looking to get off the Google train, or use both and see what you like better. Whatever, do you. So aside from the actual product itself, which I said was built in Flutter and Django, there is a marketing site for this, like a landing site, just a single page site. It is built in Astro. I really recommend Astro. I've used it. I use it on my company's website, the Young Astronauts. It's kind of just like a really nice static site generator that has a lot of the, sort of things that you'd be used to in any, meta framework, or just front end framework like React, in terms of breaking up your code into pages, into components, being able to use them. But what's really nice is it's not specifically for React or Svelte. You can actually pull those and mix and match them and use them as you want. Now, I'm not really I think I have a bit of vanilla JavaScript for a couple things in it, but I'm not really making use of that stuff because it's just like a marketing site. But I got the server-side rendering, and it uses Vite under the hood to do its builds, which is really fast. And that brings us to Versel, which is what I'm using just to host the marketing site on. And it's just connected with GitHub, and I do a push, and it does the build, and it just goes live. Now, I do want to mention, I did not want to spend the time or money on this version of the landing site. So I actually just bought a template. I think I spent $50 instead of paying a designer or designing myself and using my time, which I think is worth more than $50. I just, sort of found a template, got rid of a bunch of stuff from it, modified it, and it's good. Now, there's a good chance that someone else has this template, and if I come across it in a similar space, that'll probably be good motivation to rebuild. But again, just get to market, get it out. Similar, sort of related, I wanted to collect people's emails for joining the waitlist. And of course, I could have just built this myself in my service and collected them. But again, that's just time. So I'm using something called Launch List. You can use a free version of it, but if you wanted a little bit more customization, which I did, I pay a little bit a month. I'm good with that because I'm like, I probably only need this for a month. So I really it might just be a one-time fee that I can then cancel after if I don't need it anymore. But yeah, they'll, collect the emails for you and validate them and all that kind of stuff. And then you just get a nice like list, and then you can notify people, once they've, once they've met the threshold or whatever for you to invite them to your service. So yeah, that's called Launch List. And yeah, it worked for my needs. Do I have, other recommendations? No, because I found that one and I was like, this is good. For my early access community, I set up a Discord. Discord is really great. You can really talk to people in real time. You can, you've probably used Discord before, it's great. And it's free. Of course, you can pay to boost your server or boost your own account if you want to allow bigger file uploads and various things like that. But ultimately, you can do it for free, and it's easy for people to join. You can send them an invite link. So that's kind of what I've done, and I'm slowly inviting people from the waitlist to the Discord channel, so I don't get just like a whole bunch of users at once to be able to help beta test. And yeah, it's fun, and you can send GIFs on Discord. People love GIFs. It's great. All right. Lastly, I need some documentation for this service, how to use it from a user perspective, as well as, some coding snippets and stuff you might want to include in your Flutter app to make it better. And I've landed on using MK Docs for this, specifically MK Docs material. It's really awesome. You're just basically writing markdown files. You can customize themes. They have great plugins for code syntax highlighting, various other things, and builds like a sitemap for you. It adds search, all these kinds of things. And what else is cool is I'm hosting it on GitHub Pages, and I have a GitHub workflow where every time I push domain, it does the build and it updates my GitHub Pages where I've pointed a custom domain. So yeah, that's good for docs. It might not be something you need for your startup if it's not like a tech sort of startup, but if you do need it, I definitely recommend it. So yeah, check out my MK Docs. All right. So I just want to kind of share some things. Some of these things might click for you. At the very least, check them out if you're, trying to get a startup up. I do think that using these things has helped me do my final 10% in less than 90% of the time. Therefore, check these things out. See if they fit with your business, with your app, with whatever it is. Check out other things too. I have not used everything. I'm not a complete expert, but I'd say I have, a lot of experience with, various alternate versions of these kinds of things, and I'm really happy with the ones that I've chosen. So I'll leave it there. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.